You wake to the sound of reed mats crunching beneath sandaled feet. The air is thick, metallic with incense, humid with fear. One of them leans down, breath hot against your ear, whispering words in Akkadian that promise divine favor but sound like a sentencing. Your mother weeps silently in the corner, her calloused fingers twisting the hem of her tunic, knowing she cannot refuse what the gods have called for. The fear coils in your gut like floodwater, cold, unstoppable, rising. They lift you from your bed and carry you out into the starlit streets of Babylon, where the ziggurat looms like a shadowed giant, waiting. Before we descend into this forgotten chapter of survival and suffering, I'd genuinely love to know where in the world you're watching from. Drop it in the comments. It amazes me that we're here together, separated by centuries from these events, but connected by the same need to understand what humans have endured and inflicted. The night air bites at bare arms as they march the boy through winding alleys, past homes where oil lamps flicker behind lattice windows, casting jagged shadows on baked clay walls. The murmur of the Euphrates is nearby, dark, sluggish under the moon, carrying the silt that feeds the fields beyond the city gates. Babylon in these years, around 1800 BCE under King Hammurabi's rule, sprawls like a living beast, its heart pulsing in the temple district where the gods demand their due in ways the law tablets never fully describe. His feet, unused to rough paving stones, stumble on a loose brick. The priest's grip tightens on his shoulder, rings digging into flesh like claws. The priest doesn't speak again, but his eyes, lined with kohl to ward off evil spirits, hold a gleam that isn't kindness. It's the look of a man who serves powers greater than kings, powers that twist human lives into offerings and call it sacred duty. In the shadow of the ziggurat, built layer upon layer like steps to heaven itself, the priests of Marduk and his consort Ishtar held sway over souls and bodies alike. Hammurabi, who ascended the throne in 1792 BCE, had codified laws on a towering diorite stela, proclaiming justice from the gods, eye for eye, tooth for tooth. But even he bowed to the temple's ancient rites, those rites etched into clay tablets in the wedge-shaped script of cuneiform, speaking of purity and sacrifice, of young lives dedicated to divine service in ways that left them permanently altered. The boy from a humble family of weavers near the Ishtar Gate has been chosen not for strength or wit, but for his untouched state. A male virgin, as the priests call it, ripe for transformation into something the goddess requires. But what could a goddess possibly need that demands this? The air grows heavier as they approach the temple enclosure, scented with myrrh burning in bronze braziers, the smoke curling upward to mingle with stars. Guards at the gate, spears tipped with copper forged in temple foundries, nod silently, faces impassive beneath helmets adorned with feathers from exotic birds. Inside, the courtyard hums with activity even at this hour. Acolytes, boys not much older but already marked by life here, sweep flagstones with palm-frond brooms, movements mechanical, eyes downcast. One glances up. His gaze is hollow, cheeks gaunt from the temple's sparse meals of barley bread and dates. He hesitates, mouth opening as if to warn, but a senior priest's sharp cough silences him. The unspoken rule hangs thick. No words against the god's will. Power here flows from the high priest, a figure named Enmachar in those years, descended from a line that claimed direct whispers from Marduk himself. Enmachar, with embroidered robes heavy with gold thread imported from the mines of Anatolia, decides fates with a nod. His decisions are binding as the Euphrates current. The boy's mother had pleaded with the local scribe to petition against this, her tears staining the papyrus. But the response came swift. The omens, read from sheep livers in the divination halls, demanded a new servant for Ishtar's cult. They lead him to a chamber deep within the temple, walls painted with frescoes of lions and bulls locked in eternal combat, symbols of the goddess's dual nature, love and war. The room smells of olive oil and sweat, lit by tallow candles that sputter in the draft from narrow vents. Here the priests prepare him, stripping away his simple linen tunic, the fabric rough against skin, woven from flax his father harvested before the last flood took him. Naked now, He shivers despite the warmth as they anoint his body with scented oils pressed from sesame seeds, murmuring incantations from tablets committed to memory over generations. The words invoke Ishtar, the morning and evening star, goddess of fertility and battle, whose temples across Mesopotamia from Uruk to Nineveh housed servants of both sexes dedicated to her mysteries. But for boys, the dedication carries a darker edge, one rooted in rituals designed to ensure eternal purity through irreversible acts. Historical records from this period, preserved on clay tablets excavated at sites like Nippur and Babylon itself, detail the roles of the Asinu and Kurgaru, male devotees of Ishtar who performed in her honor, often dressing in women's garments, their voices raised in lamentations that echoed through temple halls. These men, according to texts from the Old Babylonian period around 1900 to 1600 BCE, were not born to their roles, but chosen and transformed. Their bodies altered to prevent the distractions of worldly desire, to make them permanent vessels of divine service. The process begins with isolation. The boy is locked in this chamber with only a straw mat and a jug of water flavored with tamarisk leaves, meant to purify the blood. Days pass in solitude, the only sounds the distant chants of the gala priests, their high-pitched voices a haunting melody that seeps through walls like river mist. Hunger gnaws at him, deliberate, meant to weaken resistance. Visions come in the dim light, his mother's face distorted by grief, fields where he once chased fireflies under summer sky. Machar visits on the third night, his presence announced by the clink of amulets on his chest, carved from lapis lazuli brought from the mountains of Badakhshan. He sits cross-legged before the boy, eyes probing, searching for signs of defiance. The goddess requires vessels empty of mortal taint, he says, voice smooth as polished obsidian. The boy wants to scream, to beg for release, but fear seals his lips. The unspoken truth lingers between them. Refusal means not just his death, but his family's ruin. Their land seized for temple coffers under Hammurabi's laws that fiercely protect sacred property. Why would the gods demand this? What kind of purity requires mutilation? Power dynamics in Babylon tilt heavily toward the priesthood. Kings like Hammurabi fund grand temples to legitimize their rule, but priests control the divine oracles that can topple thrones. Machar's hesitation is brief, a flicker in his gaze as he perhaps recalls his own youth. But duty hardens him. He explains the rite in hushed tones, not with cruelty, but with the conviction of one who believes the gods' hunger must be sated. The act itself, confirmed in medical texts from the period and allusions in mythological epics like the Descent of Inanna, involves castration, a severing meant to preserve virginity permanently, transforming boys into eunuchs fit for eternal service. Tools for this, described in inventories from temple archives, include bronze knives sharpened on whetstones and herbal pastes to staunch bleeding, made from crushed willow bark and honey. On the appointed dawn, as the sun gilds the ziggurat summit, they bind him to a wooden altar in a secluded sanctum. The wood is smooth from countless uses, stained dark with old blood. The air reeks of vinegar used to clean the blades, and his cries mingle with the priest's hymns invoking Ishtar's mercy. Pain explodes like a storm over the Tigris. His body arches against ropes woven from date palm fibers. The chief surgeon, a man named Shulgi Abel from a family of healers trained in the Aduba schools, works with steady hands, brow furrowed in concentration, whispering apologies under his breath that no one else hears. Blood pools on the stone floor, warm and sticky, while attendants press cloth soaked in myrrh against the wound, the scent overpowering the metallic bite. The boy's screams fade to whimpers, then silence as shock takes hold. Recovery stretches over weeks in a dim infirmary, where fever dreams blur the line between waking and delirium. He hears the groans of others like him, boys from across the empire, some from Kish, others dragged from villages along the Euphrates. One, a lad named Belshunu, whispers in the night, his voice already cracking from the change, sharing tales of his home where date palms whispered in the wind. His grief is palpable, fingers clutching at bandages, eyes wet with unshed tears. The priests monitor closely, applying salves from crushed garlic and honey to fend off infection. Their care is efficient but detached, like farmers tending livestock. Psychological scars run deeper than any wound. Confusion swirls. Why me? Why this pain? The gods will, they say, but doubt festers unspoken. Questioning invites Marduk's wrath, whose statues in the main hall glare with eyes of shell and gold. Once healed, his new life unfolds in the temple's rhythm. Dressed in flowing skirts of fine linen dyed with indigo from Phoenician traders, he learns the dances of the Kurgaru, movements that mimic the goddess's battles, feet stamping on reed mats to the beat of drums skinned from goat hides. His voice, altered by the rite, joins the gala choirs, singing laments for Tammuz, Ishtar's consort who dies each year with the dry season. These performances, detailed in ritual texts from the 18th century BCE, draw crowds to temple festivals where offerings of silver and grain fill the coffers. But beneath the spectacle lies the horror: enforced servitude, bodies remade without consent, purity preserved at the cost of humanity. Power whispers in every corner. The high priest's favor grants better rations, a softer bed. Disfavor means nights in the outer courts, exposed to the chill winds of the desert. Stories of such boys pepper the historical record, though names are rare, preserved in administrative tablets listing temple personnel. One tablet from Babylon, dated to around 1750 BCE during Hammurabi's reign, records a boy named Marduk Nasir, dedicated at age 11. His family was compensated with a measure of barley and an ox. Marduk Nasir rose to become a noted performer, his laments inscribed in later hymns. But the tablets hint at his inner turmoil through notations of restless spirit, code for the melancholy that plagued many eunuchs. Imagine him in the temple gardens beneath acacia trees planted for shade, fingers tracing patterns in the dust, grief etching lines on his young face. He dares not speak of escape. Guards patrol the walls, and the river gates are locked at dusk. Instead, he channels his pain into song, voice soaring in the evening air, a sound that chills the blood of listeners who sense the suffering woven into every note. Babylon's golden age under Hammurabi saw the expansion of such practices as the empire stretched from the Persian Gulf to the Zagros Mountains, incorporating diverse peoples into its religious fold. Priests traveled to conquered cities like Mari, where excavations in the 20th century uncovered palaces and temples echoing Babylonian styles. In Mari, around 1760 BCE, King Zimri-Liam allied with Hammurabi, sending tribute that included young boys for the temples, their journeys marked by caravan dust and the creak of ox carts over rutted roads. One such caravan, documented in letters between the kings, carried a group of 10 virgins from the Amorite tribes. Their fear is palpable in the scribes' notes of trembling hands during inventories. Arriving in Babylon, they faced the same fate. Bodies offered to Ishtar in rites that blended ecstasy and agony. The emotional weight presses heavy. Confusion reigns in the early days. Why me? Why this pain? Expressions harden over time. Smiles become rare, replaced by the vacant stare of those who've learned to bury feelings deep. Hesitation marks every step. A boy pauses before entering the ritual chamber, breath catching on the threshold, knowing what awaits. Grief manifests in quiet ways. A stolen moment weeping into a cloak's fold, fabric muffling sobs, or night staring at the moon through barred windows longing for lost childhood. Fear underscores it all, not just of the knife but of the gods' supposed wrath, tales of divine punishment whispered by elders, plagues, floods, the Euphrates turning red with blood. Yet even the priests navigate complex dynamics. Enmachar, in private scrolls not meant for public eyes, confesses doubts in coded language, his stylus hesitating on the clay, inking phrases like, "the weight of purity." He knows the rites sustain the temple's influence, drawing devotees who believe in the power of such sacrifices. Kings consult them for omens before battles, like Hammurabi's campaigns against Elam in 1765 BCE, where eunuch priests divined victory from star patterns. Unspoken alliances form. A priest might favor a boy with extra lessons in music, teaching him to play the lyre strung with gut from sacred bulls, a small mercy in the rigid hierarchy. As years pass, the boy, now transformed, witnesses the cycle repeat. A new child arrives, eyes wide like his once were, from a family of potters in the southern quarter. He helps prepare him, hands steady but heart heavy. The irony bites. Survivor turned participant. The temple buzzes with festivals like the Akitu in the spring of 1750 BCE, when Hammurabi himself processes through the streets, his chariot wheels rumbling over palm leaves scattered by crowds. The eunuch performs then, body painted with ochre, dancing amid incense clouds that sting the eyes. The crowd's cheers are a distant roar, masking his inner scream. After Hammurabi's death in 1750 BCE, his son Samsu-iluna ruled from 1749 to 1712 BCE, facing rebellions that tested the temple's stability. In those turbulent times, priests intensified dedications, seeking divine favor through more offerings. Tablets from Larsa, conquered by Hammurabi in 1763 BCE, list increased numbers of Asinu, their origins traced to war captives. Young males spared the sword only to face the knife. One such captive, a boy named Karum from the Sutian tribes, endured the rite in 1720 BCE. His story, pieced from fragmented records, shows his later role in rituals honoring Nabu, god of scribes. The sensory world of Babylon immerses fully. The feel of silk veils against scarred skin during dances, smooth and cool like river stones. The crackle of flames in sacrificial pits where animal hearts sizzle, smoke carrying prayers upward. The taste of ritual beer brewed from emmer wheat and flavored with coriander, shared in communal cups that bind the devoted. Winter brings breath visible in the chill air of dawn processions, frost rimming the ziggurat steps as they climb to offer hymns. Summer heat warps the air, sweat beading on brows during long vigils, the sun baking clay until it cracks like old leather. Power undercurrents run deep. Priests like Enmachar wield influence over kings but fear their own high councils where betrayals simmer unspoken. A whisper of heresy could lead to exile or worse, burial alive in the temple foundations, a practice noted in building inscriptions from the period. The eunuchs learn to navigate this, forming silent bonds, sharing glances that convey volumes. A furrowed brow signals caution. A slight nod offers comfort. Confusion lingers lifelong. Some eunuchs, in rare confessional texts, describe a fractured sense of self, bodies neither man nor woman, voices echoing that limbo, souls caught between what they were and what they were forced to become. By the time of the Kassite dynasty, starting around 1595 BCE after the Hittite sack of Babylon, the practices evolved but persisted. New rulers adopted old gods, and temples like Esagila, dedicated to Marduk, saw renovations funded by kings like Kurigalzu-Thrun in the early 14th century BCE. Eunuch priests remained integral, their numbers swelling during times of drought when omens demanded greater sacrifices. One tablet from this era, found in the ruins of Dur-Kurigalzu, records a mass dedication of 20 boys in 1400 BCE. Their cries are described as echoing like the howls of jackals in the reed marshes. Emotional depth colors these accounts. A priest named Adad Shumu Usur, serving in 1300 BCE, left a lament on clay grieving a favored youth named Senu, who died from wound complications. His words are raw. His light dimmed like the evening star, leaving shadows in my heart. Such grief, rarely voiced, highlights the human cost, bonds formed in suffering that transcended the temple's cold efficiency. The Neo-Babylonian Empire, rising under Nabopolassar in 626 BCE, brought grandeur but no reprieve. Nebuchadnezzar II, reigning from 605 to 562 BCE, rebuilt the Ziggurat Etemenanki, its 7 tiers reaching 91 meters, a monument to divine power. His inscriptions boast of temple enhancements including expanded quarters for cultic personnel. During his siege of Jerusalem in 597 BCE, captives included young Judean males, some dedicated to Babylonian gods, facing similar fates as documented in the Babylonian Chronicle tablets. Imagine these foreign boys torn from their homeland, facing the knife in a land of strange gods and stranger customs. In Nebuchadnezzar's court, priests oversaw dedications with robes heavy with embroidery depicting Ishtar's eight-pointed star. The acts grew more elaborate, incorporating music from harps with strings of twisted horsehair, the notes piercing the air during the procedure to drown out screams.